Hey everybody, Chris Herman here, and today on deck we've got a really great episode for you. Today I am joined by John Hamlin. John is the founder of Hamlin and Associates and the Agency Alliance, both really successful and long-lasting direct mail companies in the automotive space. I think you're really going to enjoy today's conversation. We talk about the retail automotive business, how direct mail is still extremely effective for dealers, and then of course, as always, we bounce all over the place into some fun territory. So I hope you enjoy this episode, and without further ado, here we go. It's John Hamlin. Hi, John.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm well.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Hamlin. John, you are on deck. How's it feel?
Good.
Good. John, you are now, as you just mentioned, chairman, right? You're founder and chairman. Would that be the correct introduction of John Hamlin and Associates and Agency Alliance?
Mm-hmm.
So I see I've already...
Yeah, you're okay.
I've already screwed it up. Right?
Sorry. The founder of Hamlin Associates, Agency Alliance, and Backstop Communications.
And we've known each other, I would say, probably closer to 10 years at this point in time. Maybe between 5 and 10 years. We met a while ago. Mm-hmm. We've done some business together. We've had some interesting conversations, which I would, we'll see if we veer into that territory today. But I want to start off, and I'm kind of jumping right into it, because you said something for those that are just beginning to watch, we were sitting having lunch together for a little bit. And you made a comment that I thought was really interesting. And the comment was essentially, people have said, or I've thought, or something, maybe people have said that I've been going out of business for 39 years.
Yeah, 34 years.
34 years.
Right. Which
was essentially because you've been in the direct mail business and very successful, right? Very successful in the direct mail business, primarily for retail automotive. Elaborate a little bit on what that means, because I think it's a really important message for anybody in any type of business.
Well, anytime the market would change, it seemed like it was going to somehow affect the direct mail business, whether it be a postal increase, just anything would get me some kind of a, it's going to affect your business. It's going to be negative to your business. What the one that really makes me laugh is when, you got mail, when AOL came out.
Right.
And people were like, "Oh, John, what are you going to do? This is going to get rid of the postal service. You're out of business." And I really did. I knew it would do nothing but help us, because that would be a cheaper way for people to send a message out. There'd be so much of it, it would take and become the new direct mail, mm-hmm. the new junk mail, right? And we didn't do junk mail, but we were kind of lumped in with it. So when that went away, the junk mail left the mailbox, our mail really stood out. So our business actually got better, and our results got better.
It's so great to hear that, because, you've been in the direct mail business, in the retail automotive space for now 34 years, right? We've been an advertising agency for 15 years, been around the business 24 years, I think is what it is for me. And we are in a business that changes a lot, right? Because there's always some new introduction of technology or new thought processes on how a retail automotive dealership should either be run or marketed. But as we've watched, and I think this is the point that I'm trying to make, as we've watched this time go by and we've seen all of these changes come in and out of the business, isn't it amazing how consistent many pieces of the business still are? For example, direct mail. You're still running a very successful direct mail company in the retail automotive space. And why is that? Because it works. It still works, and dealers still are utilizing it successfully, right?
Right. We're delivering a message. And if there was a bit more effective way to deliver the message, I'd be using it. Honestly, because it's this easy. If my clients are successful, then I'm successful. So if there was a better way for me to deliver the message that would get them a better response and ultimately more revenue, mm-hmm. I would be using it. It's interesting. My chief technology officer's daughter, mid-20s, you'd think she'd be anti-direct mail.
Right.
This is the new generation. And I've heard it more than once. And she's like, she likes mail. She doesn't like email. She doesn't like text. She would feel like if somebody took the time to put a stamp on a letter and actually send me something, I'm going to look at it, because it takes nothing to send me an email.
Right.
So it's getting stronger. This is, I don't even know what they call this generation. What is a 24-year-old?
You know, it put me on the spot. I feel like that's an answer as a owner of an agency I should know, and I really don't. But you know, I think as you're saying this, I'm thought process of mine are just starting to fire, because okay, we had these old, now it's called legacy media, right? I think that's what they called the old geezer media of TV, radio, print, and direct mail. That is, you know, that's called legacy media, because I guess that's a nice way of saying that's old as shit. But, right? But
so it's the first time I've heard it. So if I hear it again, I'll know not to go, yeah, that's us.
Yeah, exactly. Now when you hear legacy media, you're like, yeah, legacy media. But with each new thing that has come along, there's always been this mindset of like, well, it's replacing everything, right?
Right.
And it really, nothing's necessarily been replaced. I mean, I'm not hanging my hat on this, but we still have clients that do newspaper ads. Okay, now, am I going to the mountaintop to die on the newspaper? Absolutely not. But people of all ages and age brackets and demographics and whatever you want, everybody absorbs content and messaging differently, right? You're talking about a 24-year-old girl who is like, I like getting mail, right?
Right.
I mean, if you get a nice letter, right, that looks like it's been handwritten or has been handwritten, it's got a stamp, maybe it's from a friend, or even just a simple thank you note, boy, does that stand out to the onslaught of like text and WhatsApp messages and emails and all that stuff. So I think, and I've always believed, and I'm glad that we're able to continue working together, direct mail has this place, and it is super effective, because it's like, I'm sending this to you, addressing something to you that is specific to you, that still works.
Right. And that's the basis of it. It's interesting, because a lot of times in the industry, and I think this has to do with ego, we try to get ahead of ourselves. And, you know, that, like, I'll tell you one of the things I can't stand to hear is, we sold 200 cars at ABC Nissan. No, we didn't take one TO. We didn't bump a trade. We didn't lower a rate. We didn't call F&I and tell them to drop a product. What did we do? We started a conversation. Right. That's what we do. We don't sell cars. We start conversations. And so then it comes down to, how do you start the best conversation? Because the guy that can start the best conversation with the best results ultimately wins.
It's interesting, what do you say is the best conversation? Like, and I agree with you. I've sometimes said that we're like a matchmaker. We're trying to bring somebody together that's selling something to some, and bringing a person who's interested in that product. We're making an introduction, right? We're starting a conversation. You said want to start quality conversation. So what does that mean?
A quality conversation is really like a bar. Where do you put the bar? Where is it? Is it on the floor? If I'm starting the conversation that we're selling cars at invoice, with no payments for 6 months and no money down, I've left the sales manager no room to do anything. If I start the conversation and I do not discount a car, I'm still able to get a customer to come in, that it's all about the customer and their experience and where they are in their buying cycle. I'm not discounting the car, so I start the bars up high. And now that sales manager, he has the room, she has the room to use it if they need it. Instead of people coming in and there's no room for them to do anything. You see the difference in the conversation?
Yeah,
if I'm able to have somebody come in and there's no mooch factor, in other words, they're not coming in for the 5 gold coins, what happens? Because we don't do that either. What happens? The salespeople go, wow, no mooch factor. So why are they here? They have only one reason to be here. That's to buy an automobile. And and I know, when salespeople get behind something, we couldn't stop them if we wanted to.
Right.
So it's just, how do you start the conversation? You want to start it with 5 gold coins? You're going to have a huge mooch factor. If you want to start it with really helping the customer, you'll probably sell more cars.
Oh God, we used to do so much of that mail too. Like, the oversized scratch off stuff, and it's like, it was, you're right. It's starting a bad conversation, right? I really like what you're saying about that, because what you want to do is you want to make an introduction and you want to leave their you want to leave plenty of room in there for there to be a conversation that works for both parties, right?
Right, exactly. Well put. When they get to the dealership, we can get agreement from the customer when they get to the dealership that basically says, I will buy the car within 10 seconds. That sounds unbelievable, but it's an absolute. Because the way that we set our letters up and the way that we set up how we do it, there's a portion of the letter that we train the salesperson to go to that says what exactly is the call to action that's specific to that customer. And I always kid with the dealers. I say, your guys can read, right? And I'm like, of course they can read, and they laugh. And it's, okay, so you look at the letter and you say, so Mr. Customer, your goal here today would be, and then read. And it tells you, would be to lower your current interest rate from 14.9 down to something a little more attractive. Correct? What's the answer to that? Correct. Is that not an offer? Of course it is. And then I pointed to the dealer, because I just showed him the file. I said, didn't you just tell me you'd take that offer? And he's like, yes. What's left?
Right.
Go give the best walk around you ever gave in your life. It's exciting. I still have that love and that passion for what we do. I feel as I explain it.
Yeah, I can see it in your eyes, and that leads me. So let's back up a little bit. Take us through you getting into this business and creating this company, and where did the passion start for you, and then maybe lead us a little bit through different phases or time periods in your company, to where you're at today. I realize that's a very open-ended question,
and
right? But
30 some years. And yet, then the 80s were in there, okay?
Okay. We can blow through a little bit of that, okay?
Yeah, you'd show up with it. Never mind. Go there. I started out working for a company in Chicago, Aspen, then it turned into Epsilon.
Okay.
And the gentleman that owned that, Pat O'Reilly, and I were amazingly good friends. And I said, man, I want to do my own thing. And he was very supportive. I helped him when he needed it and did the job, and he was very supportive. So went out, and the very thing that I'm talking about against, I guess, would be like gifts and gimmicks and things like that, was what I did. And I walked into a dealership one day, and the top salesman looked at me and goes, almost, I think it's you again. And I looked at him funny, and he said, so we're having another mooch sale? And it just ripped me apart. Yeah. That's when I came up and said, wait a minute, it's got to be a way to do this without gifts and gimmicks and being slightly deceitful. You're definitely approved, let's go back to Ed McMahon. You've definitely won $1 million, right? And so that's when we started to focus on being, different. I'll give a good example. My competition, their philosophy is if you're not in front of the Attorney General once a quarter, we're not pushing hard enough. Mine is, I've been 34 years in the business. I've never been in front of the Attorney General. Two totally different philosophies, two very successful companies. It was just so we started out going down that road, getting known as the company that doesn't do gifts, doesn't do gimmicks, we don't have to lie to a customer, and we built a big reputation on that. Then we started to build software with this to help the dealer to communicate, to be able to look at the customer and be able to communicate with everybody intelligently, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all message. Because everybody's somewhere, everybody's in a different place. You may be coming out of a lease, and this person over here may have been at a high interest rate. There's a great example. What's the last thing that somebody that's got a 15% interest rate got told when they left that dealership and were signed up at 15%?
I can think of a lot of things, but go ahead.
The last thing they were told is make your payments on time, and in 18 months or so, I can lower your interest rate. Why don't we make good on that promise?
Right.
Because we know that's what they said. That's what every F&I manager across the country said. Let's just make good on the promise. I don't have to discount a car to do that. Right? So it's just that kind of thinking.
So many dealers, that we've worked with over the years, and I'm sure you've seen the same thing. I'm curious because we all know that this is something that can and should be done, and I'd be curious from your perspective on how often it is getting done. If you look at direct mail or direct marketing, right, and you think, okay, typically through the years, it's been done in large quantities, right? Like if you go back to your starting point when it was, the gifts and all that stuff, and we've done plenty of that stuff as well too. Why? A lot harder to do, quite frankly, if you're going into the store all the time, because you've got to see the people that are on the receiving end of what you're bringing, right? I bet that was a real eye opener for you. I know for us sometimes, because we were oftentimes here, in the shop, it was easy to say, well, you got 200 ups, or you got this or that, but there's a disconnect there. And I'm sorry, I'm bouncing around. So let me tighten up the question. You start off doing like large scale mail, and or even the buyback letters and stuff that sometimes go out in bulks of 10 or 12,000 piece. We all know that smaller personalized communications are the ones that really work the best. Is that true?
Not necessarily.
No, really.
I'll tell you, that's one of the things that strategy is. There's 3 reasons direct mail fails, and one of them is strategy. All right, I'll give you a good example. Working with an agency, all right, and they'll come in and they'll say, all right, I got enough to do 5,000 pieces for this big dealer over here. I got enough budget left. Let's go ahead and drop 5,000 pieces. This dealer's got 26 salespeople. All right, so 5,000 pieces. Let's say we get a 1% response rate. Okay, that's 50 people. There's a 5-day selling window. That's 10 people a day divided by 26 salespeople is 0.04 customers a day. If you want the result to be, boss, I didn't see shit off of that mailer, you'll win. That you'll get exactly that, and they're not lying. Right. They didn't. How do you see a quarter of or 1.04 of a customer? You can't. And so the salespeople, boots on the ground, say, we really didn't see anything off that. You see, so you have to use strategy to make that work for them to see it happen. Because if they're not seeing it happen, they're not going to execute. Those things we talked about, like how to greet the customer and get the information right up front. So a lot of that, how much they do, comes down to strategy. I'll talk to dealers and I'll say, they'll tell me exactly what they want. I'm going to do 5,000 pieces, and I'll say, okay, look, I'm either stupid and don't know how to shut up and close the deal, or I care. I'll let you decide, but let me tell you why that's a flawed strategy. Because I'm at that point where, here, look, if we always agree, one of us is unnecessary, and I don't want to become unnecessary. And if I deliver a bad event to him, I'll become unnecessary.
Right.
So I need to stop him from making that mistake.
So for the dealers that would be listening right now, what would be some of the core fundamental basic principles that you would say are always worthwhile when to apply to a direct mail campaign? So clearly you're saying you got 24 salespeople, a 5,000 piece mailer, not a good idea, right? So are there some core basic ratios or thought processes that you like to apply?
Well, yes. 1,000 pieces per salesperson until you get up into the really big stores. Then
Right.
Once you get around 15, 20,000 pieces, 25,000, then you're pretty good at most good sized stores, even if they have 60 salespeople. The bigger the store, then that philosophy shrinks a little bit. The other big killer is what we call the crack effect, and that is, you've seen what happens. These things are extremely successful, and they're like, all right, let's do it again. No, you will burn it out. There's a company I know of, okay, that their nickname is Scorched Earth, because they go in and now the dealer can't get a pulse out of his market because they've burned it out so bad.
Right.
So that would be the other thing that you look at. It's like, wait a minute, how many of these should you really be doing before you're overdoing it? Right? And then the other would be cleansing of the list, okay, and execution. Make sure you're, because if direct mail is sold price per piece, and it is, that means there is a profit per piece.
Sure.
So the more pieces we sell you, the more money we make. That does not encourage most direct mail companies to really clean a list. And that's what you've seen in our software. The cleansing is insane. The hygiene is off the charts. I'm not talking about cherry picking, which I think is the worst thing that ever happened. Okay. I'm talking about hygiene. That this guy doesn't live here anymore, or this person's dead. Okay. There's no reason to send them a letter. Or I could be in your database as John Hamlin, Hamlin John, John C. Hamlin, Hamlin Associates. Don't send me 5 letters.
Right.
That's waste. So I'm wasting your money. So there really is strategies and things that you do, you look at, we try to educate dealers on, so they can enjoy success off of it rather than the peaks and the valleys and well, that company doesn't work anymore. Let's go to another company. It's not another company. You just need to do it right.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to be said for having and this is with all of marketing, but we'll tailor this to direct mail, a good, consistent strategy, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is, number one, focus on data and clean data and making sure that we're not mailing to people. You don't want to, nobody wants to waste money. And it's not in any direct mail company's long-term interest to be jacking up their profitability by mailing to a bunch of people that, aren't going to even receive the letter anyway because they are either dead or don't live there. Because ultimately you're getting judged on, well, how did it work, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the comeback is it worked well. Okay, let's do it again. And what you're saying is, can't do it again too quickly. You gotta space this out.
Right.
But that measured approach of just consistent, regular communication from a dealer to your customer base or to a different list, super effective, right? Because it's like, oh, I've got another thing that's tailored specific to me, and today is the day that I'm actually ready to act on this.
And you are a moving target. Okay, that's the other thing that while you space it out, it's like a person that qualified to get out of their lease or didn't qualify 3 months ago now does.
Mm-hmm.
A person that didn't qualify to lower their interest rate, now they do. Or any of the other calls to action that starts to move, right? A customer that was your competitors, it's in your competitors database, and we have an ethical way of establishing that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we finally got them in twice for service. Let's sell them a car. Right? How to go after somebody else's database, right? Ethically, right? I'll disclose it. How you do it? I have your database, and I go out and I buy every Chevy owner in your market area. I remove your database from it. What's left is your competitor's database, or pump ins, service not sold. Think about that. Every car that's service not sold is either been pumped into your market, which dealers hate, or it's somebody that moved to the market area and they don't have a selling dealer. There's that list. What about I'm a Toyota dealer. Well, what about the Toyota that was sold by the Chevy dealer, used?
Mm-hmm.
Don't I want to get him in for service?
Of course.
And so there's just, it's looking at that as a whole game plan, not I got $5,000. Okay, no problem. I got a really cool. Here's a really cool piece. Let's get it out really quick. I mean, if my clients say, send me a really cool piece of mail, they don't know anything about us.
Right?
Yeah, because that's just not us.
That's not your thing. Like, here's the new cool, flashy, whatever.
Yeah,
right?
and that's usually, this one was really nice. It's strategy. It's all the other things that go with it.
But that's what a lot of dealers have been guilty of over the years. As they say, they get, they do a piece, it works, and all of a sudden it's like, man, we want to do it again right away, right? Or give me the next hot thing, and then, I mean, how many times have you had the conversation where like, mail's not working, right? Didn't work. It's flop. It's not, and that's going to happen with anything that you do. You're not always going to reach a perfect population of people that are like, we're ready to go, right? I mean, as you said, people come in and out of the market. Maybe in 2 months they're more ready than they were today. I mean, there's always people that are in the market, but this notion that everything is going to work all the time is it's sort of an erroneous thing. And that's why it's so important, and I know you feel this way, is for dealers to have a balanced approach to what they do. And one of the things I really respect about you, I mean, you've been very successful over the years. I would be willing to bet there was a number of times that you might have been tempted to go, do we branch out and add this piece into the mix here? Because you have had over the years a significant dealer client base, right?
Yes.
Were there ever times when you're like, hey, maybe we could bring something different? Or have you always been just, no, we're just going to stay with the mail? No,
we've brought in, talking about piece, a piece of mail?
No, not mail, like different things, like digital things or other areas, right?
No, it's interesting because we get asked that all the time. We can help somebody with that, like an agency, but no, that's not our wheelhouse. Everybody mistakes that. They're like, well, you would know this, you would know that. No, we don't.
See, that's what I dig, because you've worked really hard to build something that really works. You've been successful, and you've stayed with that. And we were talking earlier about, companies that grow and that get bought out by other companies and stuff. There's a lot of temptation in the industry to like be more than what you are, go to the quote unquote next level. But then when that happens, it's like what you were good at,
yes,
it's gone.
You said it. It's so true. It's very true for us. I've guarded against that my whole career. That's the biggest thing is no, we're not. Once we get the whole automotive industry handled, then we can look at that. And that's kind of me just being a smart ass,
right?
Because we're not there. We won't get there. We're constantly evolving. Things like you said, they're always changing. And the idea is to stay cutting edge, as we talked earlier. Keep everybody in your rearview mirror. Right. And that's a big enough job because, like we were talking earlier, we get knocked off all the time. Well, they think they're knocking us off. They don't, are behind the scenes. Right. Most companies don't. And dealers don't. So one dealer a salesman will be talking to a sales manager from another store. What did you guys do to sell so much? We did this. And they'll show them one of our letters, right? Well, right now that he's going to go knock off that letter and not have success because how we work. Well, so you know what I'm saying? So there's all of that in there that we're doing that they don't see. People don't see. They try to knock it off. People don't knock off losers. They only knock off the ones that are winning. Well, and right? you guys have the foundational structure in all aspects of it, right? It's very easy for somebody to go out or for a direct mail company to talk about, okay, we got this great piece. And, our data is good. We got this thing, we right. We cleanse it, whatever. It's very easy to say that, but then it's another thing to actually have like a real software application that is built to make sure that who we're communicating to is absolutely up to date and accurate, and that there is meaningful ability to follow up and see what's happening with those people, which is what you guys have built, correct? Right, exactly. That's exactly what we've built, a way to communicate, not just with your customers, but let's establish who your other best targets are. And this is hard data. This isn't Google data or any other kind of bot data that is, that's AI or anything like that. This is based in so much fact. You can't argue it. And so, to your point, we've got different lists that we create in-house, all right, to create who we're going to target. And then we just make sure that we don't violate the basics. Like, let's not mail them every week, okay? Let's not undermail. Let's not overmail. You don't implode a dealership either, right? So, why have so many direct mail companies come and gone? It's a great question. Because we all know it. It's just like. Well, I think what I've been told is with people that have worked for me and then gone and then gone under is that I made it look way too easy. It's not as easy as I made it look. And I'm not sure how I do that if I do that. But I could look at some of the companies recently that are circling the drain or are gone, and I looked at them 10 years ago and said, no, we're not going to do that. It won't last. The sustainability, you can see it from the beginning. It's like, all right, I said I don't like cherry picking. I think it's one of the worst things you can do. All right, and when dealers say, look, I just want to mail to people with equity. I don't want to mess with all these other people. Okay. Out of the last 10, and this is a good question, okay? I'll ask every dealer that says this to me. I'll say, out of the last 10 deals you desk, how many have negative equity? Do you know what my average answer is? I'm not making this up. All of them. They smile and they go, 11. Okay, because, so you deliberately don't want to market to the people that are buying your product. And they go, okay, you're right, never mind. It kind of leads itself into, a dealer said to me, he goes, I've done, how much direct mail I've done? Well, with due respect, sir, do you know how much I've done? Okay, let me be the pro here. This is what I'm good at. I can't run a dealership. I'm not any good at that. I don't sell cars. I'm not any good at that. I'm good at this. Let me be a pro here, and you guys go sell cars. Does that make sense? Yeah. Of course. Of course. It's funny. 11 out of 10 with negative equity, and it's and it'll be interesting to see, because we were talking about this a little bit before. You've got this very strange situation right now where people are paying crazy money for cars, right? Crazy money. 6, 9, 12 months, those cars are not going to be worth nearly
what they just paid for them. When you got people buying used cars, 2-year-old used cars, and they're paying what was MSRP on that car from 2 years ago, right? So in 9 months, when inventory is really rolling again and used car values come down, we're going to be facing potentially a huge negative equity situation
and repo market,
right?
Yeah, it's we're creating a monster, but it will pass,
right?
It'll get through it. People will either keep their cars and pay, continue to pay on them, or they'll let them go, or But for every one of those, I'm optimistic about everything. Another year passes. You know what that means? That means the 21 or 20-year-old is now 21 and buying their first car. The 16-year-old's buying their first car. So there's always a group of people coming into the market that aren't buried, that aren't, in that situation. And the group of people that you're talking about, which is absolutely, positively, 100% going to happen, just deal with that when we deal with it.
Well, and it's interesting. Those of us that have been around this business, a long time, we've seen these cycles before, right? Mm-hmm. So you see it coming, it's coming,
right?
And already you can be thinking about, well, from a marketing or advertising or direct marketing perspective, I know exactly what we're going to do. We know how to communicate to those people. We know how to work with dealers to say, okay, well, what are the programs that you have, and how are we going to help alleviate some of it? I mean, some people are just going to be straight up tanked, and that there's nothing they can do. But there's also going to be another wave of opportunity to message to consumers that says, we understand the situation that you're in, and we can help, right?
Yeah, and the other thing too is we've been dealing, in this case, what you're talking about, the impending, it's coming, okay? And it's coming probably to a level that we've never seen before. But there was once a time when 20 grand flipped was a level we'd never seen before. And now, ask a dealer once, twice, 3 times a month, he gets somebody this 20 grand flipped, done. They end up having 10 grand down and 800 beacon score, and they're good to go.
Right.
So we don't want to ignore it, because who says treat me like I can't buy a car? I won't. And I honestly did. I buy from my clients. I don't negotiate, and I tell them, I said, look, if I'll be back. I buy a lot of cars. I'm a car nut. Okay. So I'm going to take your first pencil, because I'm not going to do that to them, right? And I had a dealer that buried me 20 grand. And I went to his sister store to trade out of the car, and they were almost afraid. And the owner, partner, he knew, man. He says, don't worry about it. He goes, I'll go talk to him. He goes, John, you're 20 grand upside down. I said, no problem. What, how much do I got to give you a check for? He goes, well, 20 grand. I said, no, for the whole thing. Treat me like I can't buy a car, and I won't. And who are you to say that I can't? And so we ought not ignore these people, because if they really want to buy a car, they might just figure out a way to do it. Even the ones that were buried right now.
It's amazing what lengths people will go through to accomplish something that they want to accomplish.
Exactly.
Right? I mean,
well played.
You're not going to stand in somebody's way if they're like, I'm getting out of this car.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to find a way, right?
Right. Look at this shiny new credit card I just got. It's got a 20 grand limit.
Mm-hmm. It's so funny that I've learned this over time, is there's always a way. There's always a way. Mm-hmm. No matter how challenging the situation, what you think you might be facing, there's always a way.
Yeah, I agree.
And if you just stay calm, and this is talking about us, this is talking about consumers, but there's always a pathway to what it is that you want. Now, it might not be easy. It might not work out right away, but there's always a way. People are resilient.
I was going to say the same exact word.
They figure it out,
especially if they really want to buy that car.
Right.
They have aunts they can be called, and grandmas and dads and so on that can change that situation in a heartbeat.
Right. It's interesting. I'm looking at you, and I remember this look before, but you've got a real bright twinkle in your eyes, particularly when you're talking about this stuff. You light up.
I'm glad that's still there.
Talking about it. It's there. It's it's youthful, it's exuberant, and I can see it. I feel like I'm almost sitting across from a 12-year-old kid. I'm serious, with that level of excitement. Where does that come from? Where did that start from you? Because clearly you've got a passion for what you do, but you also have a natural knack as a salesperson. Where was that developed? When did you notice it?
Great question. I don't know, but I know it's there, and I'm scared that someday I might lose it, because I do. I'll tell you a funny story. I get sometimes too passionate, too excited. Because I love what I do. I know our product's the best. I'm not trying to sell and oversell or anything like that. I mean, I'm just being 100% honest. If you hooked me up to a lie detector test, I could pass that test saying we are the best there is. Now, I may be wrong, but I passed the test. Okay? And so my excitement comes from knowing that and just loving the fact of what we can do. And it's gotten to a point one time where a dealer was having... I think it was a DMS provider, or maybe it was an ad agency, I'm not sure. But he's having me present in his conference room, which was right off of his office. And I've known this dealer forever. And so I'm presenting, and I'm doing what you're talking about. I get excited. I talk faster, probably way too fast. And then I stopped, paused for a second, and I said, "Hey, Gary, can I get a bottle of water?" Yeah, go ahead. So I go in his office. I hear laughter start. I get the water, I come back in, and laughter stops. And I'm like, okay, what's going on? And he's like, nothing, man, continue. I said, no, come on, what's going on? Yeah. And he's like, he leaned over to me and he goes, did we piss Mr. Hamlin off? I think I was all worried that I was upset. Evidently, the level of passion that I brought was so over the top that they thought I was angry. And they were worried, did we do something to make him angry? And Gary just started laughing. He goes, that's just John. He sometimes gets just passionate about what he's doing. So it can get a little out of hand too.
Well, but there's so much to be said for enthusiasm and passion for what you do. There's nothing worse than being presented something by somebody who's just like, I mean, in this day and age, particularly with these Zoom calls, it's like ad nauseum. You sit through some of these calls and you're just like, oh my God, when's it going to end? When's it going to stop? Right? Because there's no when you're selling something, obviously you want to make that connection, but you want to convey to the person you're communicating about that you believe in what you're offering them, what you're selling them, that you're excited about it. That's what gives people a sense of confidence. Now, it doesn't work 100% of the time, but man, when somebody's feeling that, they're like, yeah, no, okay, I can feel this guy's enthusiasm about this.
Have you ever heard the term, you got to give it away to keep it?
No. All
right, this is how it applies. Okay, so I'm presenting to you. Say you're the group that was in with Gary that day, okay? And it's the opposite of dying on stage. Okay, so I'm showing you what we're doing and how we're doing it, and I'm looking at it, and you're nodding, and you're like, that's cool. Oh, I like that. Hey, we've never done that. And now all of a sudden, they're elevated.
Right.
Then I get elevated. You got to give it away to keep it. The more excitement you give away, the more you get back, the more and I think sometimes, like I said, in that particular case, they thought I was actually angry. I don't know how I managed to come across like that, but it was pure enthusiasm. And I remember I was feeding off the fact that their heads were nodding. And they're like, oh, that's cool. We like that. We've never done that.
Anybody in sales in any field, I don't care what you're selling. That's so much the truth right there. This whole notion, because how many times do you walk into a room, right? And it's always the same thing.
Oh, yeah.
Right? It's always the same thing. Now, and some of that is a bullshit act too, right? Mm-hmm. Some of that is I'm putting my defensive. I'm not going to be sold today, right?
Yeah, right.
How many times you face you get that whole sort of slumpy. They're looking at their phone, rolling their eyes and stuff. But then you get that for whatever you go in your thing, you judge the room, you get the tone right. You start building the energy. You start getting those yeahs. You start getting them going, oh, wait, right? Mm-hmm. And then now you got something. Now you've got something that you can work with. But you've got to be focused. A, you've got to have the passion and the knowledge and the drive. But B, you got to pay attention to that room. Mm-hmm. Right?
Oh, yeah.
And you're working it like a crowd.
Yeah, and there's a point in time in our presentation where somebody's they can't help themselves. They can't. Wow, wait, that's cool. And once that happens, then 2 or 3 other heads turn and look. And now if you're the guy over there rolling your eyes, the boss is looking at you like, why aren't, he's embarrassing the boss.
Right. But you also, as a person selling in that environment, right, you also have a responsibility to not kick back and coast at that point in time, right? Because a lot of people will do that, right? A lot of people will be like, oh yeah, we got this shit. Oh, it's done deal, you know?
No, it's just the opposite. You get to give it away to keep it. And that creates more excitement. The more excited they are. It's the same for like a comedian. You know, it's like people sitting back and Jerry Seinfeld's talked about this. And they're like, okay, make me laugh.
Right.
And you know, once he gets them, then he gets better at his performance. Once they start, you know, he gets them to laugh, he gets them in the groove, and all of a sudden he's performing better.
There's an energy exchange that starts to happen.
It's a great term.
It's, you know, and that's what
enthusiasm's contagious.
Oh man, it's so it really is, and that energy that's going back and forth is really, really an exciting, and it's an uplifting feeling. And I remember an old guy that I work with, he's like, the greatest moment is when they say yes, and the worst moment is when they say yes. And what he was saying was, is because then you leave that like exciting thing, and now you got to go to work. Like now you have to deliver on that expectation, right? And there's nothing that feels worse as somebody in our position than not delivering on that expectation, because you've not only let a new client down, right? And I'm not saying you've ever done this, but I know there's been times we've gotten people fired up and then what we did just didn't work, or we bungled something up, and you know that person is left with you had them here and you left them here.
Right.
And that's, you know, that doesn't feel good.
No, because if it didn't bother you, you wouldn't be worth anything. Honestly, if that didn't bother you, then you don't belong in the business. That's what I believe. And I know you. I know that the fact that you said it shows me it's clear. You're right. It does bother us. It should bother us.
Right.
You know, I want them to succeed. I have passion for that. And there are some times where, you know, I'll just look at it and I'll be, what the heck happened here? How did this not, you know, it worked everywhere else this weekend, but here. And you've seen our tracking. It doesn't lie.
Right.
I mean, I'm the first one that looks at it and goes, ugh, you know, that didn't work.
Right.
What happened? You know, and that's when we begin a quest to find out, okay, what happened here? You know, because there's only a few things.
Well, and you're definitely more on the spot for that than we would be, because we're managing lots of communicative marketing avenues, right? Where you've got one thing, right?
Right.
And that one thing, it's like, okay, there's sort of a predetermined expectation. Okay, we're going to send this many pieces. We expect this many people to show up, and out of that many people, we should sell this many cars. And then you know, then we have an ROI that we all feel comfortable about. So with yours, if it doesn't work, right, like you know it right away.
I know it before they do.
Right. Of course. Okay. Yeah.
it's like I call it that. It's like a 24-hour period of. It just sucks because I know it's not going to get pulled out.
Right.
You know, and so what I try to do is I call the dealer and say, before you say anything, I'm tracking it on my end, and you know, I don't know what happened here, but we'll figure it out. And there's been times where we found out that the mail is sitting on a pallet somewhere, and I love that because now I have a reason. Okay, I don't want to be a failure. So, oh wait, half your mail's still stuck in wherever in Wisconsin.
Right. Now
I have a reason, and I'm, you know, FedExing them a check. I don't mind that. It's not having the reason, not knowing how did I get my butt kicked here? You know, randomly did we just fall flat on our faces? And if we don't, like I said, if we don't care about it, we shouldn't be in the business.
Yeah, and that goes back to a question that I asked you earlier, which is why I have so many come and gone. Because I think that there have been a lot of people that particularly got into the direct mail game because it seemed like a quick way to make a buck. You start selling a bunch of mail. They don't care if they burn the market out. It doesn't matter because there's always somebody else that they can move on to with their next. Well, we got the hot thing, and it's that churn and burn. But at a certain point in time, you burn through the relationships, right? And if you don't show that if you're not in it with your client, right, and if you're not willing to, there's been plenty of times we've screwed stuff up, and I've written a check for God knows how much money where you're just like, oh, all right, well, that's what you got to do. That we made a mistake. We got to own up to it. We got to take full responsibility for it. But not everybody does that. And I'm not sitting here patting ourselves on our back.
No, but you need to bring that out because that's a fact. It's a fact that they don't. And the ones that don't shouldn't be in business because they're giving the ones that do a bad name.
Mm-hmm.
Because I get lumped in with direct mail. And we know there's a segment of direct mail out there that they've got a name for them, direct mail scumbags. Do you think I like that?
Of course not.
I don't like that any more than a salesperson likes being called a sleazy used car salesman.
Right.
All right, because that's not who he is and that's not who I am.
Right.
But I get lumped in there. So I'm real protective over that, of watching and making sure that are we doing everything we can. Because, we almost went here a minute ago. We do everything we can to make sure an event is successful. And we still have times that we fail. Imagine if we started skipping steps, started doing shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Then what would happen to our business? Because even doing the best you can, you're going to fall on your face every now and again. God forbid you should try to save money and not do it right.
Right.
Which I think lends itself to where you were headed.
Well, and what I've found is that nobody expects everything to work 100% all. There's going to just be times sometimes you just, a dealership's going to have a bad weekend. Sometimes what you did didn't work. And that open, honest, let's use the words used a lot, transparent, transparent relationship that you have with your client lends itself to give you the ability to work through those times, right? When you have that good relationship with a client and you had a bad weekend, as long as everybody looks at it and goes, okay, well, this didn't work, we're going to fix or adjust this, or that didn't work. But it's having that conversation open and out on the table,
right,
that builds the trust that says, okay, no, it didn't work, let's come together and figure out why it didn't.
It's funny is you can get that up front, and I don't know exactly how. I just know it's happened, and I'm not going to mention names, but I went to meet with a large dealer group, and when we sat down, and it's all the partners and the boss, and he said, we've been using company XYZ, and we've been doing pretty good with them, but we heard you guys were really good. Just wanted to have a shot. Now, do you remember the movie Liar, Liar, when he went into the conference, the boardroom, and he couldn't lie, so he started calling everybody names and that? Do you remember that part?
I think so, yeah.
It was kind of like that moment when everybody looked at the boss to see how he's going to respond to what he just said. Because I said, wait a minute. If XYZ was doing such a great job, I wouldn't be sitting here. So let's not get off on the wrong foot. And then there was that pregnant pause of, boss, are you going to accept that? Because it was kind of like a smart ass, and I wasn't. I was being very honest about it.
Right.
That let's not get off. I don't want to get off on the bad foot. You teach people how to treat you, right? So let's, and there was that moment like, okay, let's see where this goes. And he goes, you're right. It hasn't worked for about 4 months. I said, good. Let me look at that. My best advice to you might be that you hold off for 30, 60, 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
Let me look at what you've been doing. I promise you I'll advise you honestly. And that may mean that you don't do anything for a little bit. I've had their business ever since. It's just being honest.
Mm-hmm. Have you found that there's been times when you've had to overcome that direct mail stereotype?
Yeah, all the time.
Right.
Yeah, because when you're brand new with a new customer and they've had a bad experience, and most of them have,
mm-hmm.
We actually address it. I hate direct mail. Okay, I actually love that objection because I know what that means. That means he's had a bad experience.
Right.
Okay, so now I know what I'm up against. And I said, okay, so obviously you've had a bad experience. Let me look at what you did. Let me show you what we do. And you can tell me if what we do would have alleviated that bad experience. And they go, wow, that would have definitely worked.
Isn't it so funny? People tell you exactly how to sell them.
They do.
Right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And we have that.
I hate direct mail. Okay. Right. Exactly. So you know they've had a bad experience. All you got to just say is, well, tell me what happened, right?
I got teed up once. I'm not going to say names. To a very large dealer. And when we set the meeting up, he said, I just want to let you know that I don't like direct mail, and the only reason you're here is because so-and-so was bragging about you, and he made me promise that I'd give you an interview with you. So I get to his office, and he says, again, I want you to know, I promised him I'd give you 15 minutes, but I hate direct mail. I hate direct mail guys, and I've promised my managers no more direct mail. You got 14 minutes left. we ended up doing a deal with him and broke the single-day sales record for one of the largest Toyota dealerships in the nation. How can you not love that?
Right.
That's nothing gets me more excited than that.
What are, if you were to think of all the years of doing this, when people say, I hate direct mail, like at the end of the day, what does it end up being? Like, what's the real objection? What is the bad experience that they had or whatever? Is there something you could say 9 times out of 10, the previous company did this and this is why?
No, well, there's like I said, there's the 3 things that happen that'll make direct mail fail.
Right.
Okay, so first look at that. And then, it could be the company you're dealing with. Are they on the verge of bankruptcy? Did they send out 3,000 pieces after you paid them for 10? And forge a postal receipt? I mean, there's things that dealers need to be concerned about.
Right.
They're not angry for no reason. They have a reason to be upset with what happened. But I would more rather look at it and go, okay, let's find out what happened here. Let's find out why it failed, so we don't make the same mistake.
If you look back on your career and look forward, working with dealers, and you've worked with, so many large and small dealers, but you've been with a lot of them. What are the characteristics that you like about this business? Excuse me.
They're resilient. When the COVID thing happened, we have a dealer, Moran Chevrolet, one of the largest Chevy dealers in the country, in Detroit. Mm-hmm. They were shut down. And I'm like, we're not shut down. And they dropped mail and did 290 cars where every other dealer was shut down. And they just stepped out on the ledge and said, no, we're not. We're not going down. And I just love that. The fight that's in a car dealer.
Yeah.
They're resilient. They figure out a way. They might go down for a little while, but they don't stay down.
Yeah, if you think about it, through all the years, and particularly in the last 15, we had the downturn of 2008. We've had COVID. There's been a number of a couple big impacting events in the economy that could have and did take out of a lot of businesses. But that's what I love about the car business too. It's just that that grit, the determination, mm-hmm. the resilience. It's just knowing that, or that they know that they can sell their way through this. If not taking a negative out, it's an extreme positive, mm-hmm. optimistic outlook that dealers have, right? They're like crazy optimists, almost sometimes too much, right?
I look at it like this, and tell me if you think this is true, because I think it is. I think that you could take a car dealer and put him in just about any other business, and he'd make it successful. You can't take somebody from a real estate or a restaurant or whatever and put them in a car dealership and they'll be successful.
Absolutely.
Do you agree?
100%.
They have that, like you call it, grit, that ability to go out and they just make things happen.
Yeah, it's like New York.
Yeah, and it's cool because we're selling to them. So, I used to say, if we can convince them that they wish they had a whole floor full of people like us, right? This is my younger years. Okay, they sign up because they just love the enthusiasm. There's no overselling them. They want it. They want somebody to come in and be aggressive. You can do that. It's okay. If you go in there like milquetoast, they're not gonna have any respect for you.
Have you ever ventured outside of the retail automotive space into other business verticals?
Yes, a little bit with political.
Right. Interesting. Okay, so the first question sort of answered itself, which is not really a lot, right?
No,
right.
No.
You stayed in your wheelhouse, and
right.
we dabble outside, inside, outside. I will, I've had a hard time finding that same human connection, like excitement that you find within the car business when you're dealing with
find it
when you're outside.
That's why I don't go outside of it.
Right.
When I say political, I did it so little it's insignificant, but it's a whole different thing.
Right.
We could be in others, I guess. I don't want to. I like working with car dealers.
Yeah.
We're good at this. It's like people confuse us with advertising agencies. I've never bought a Google AdWord. I don't know how to buy media. I don't know how to any of that, right? So I do know this really well, and I'd rather stay there and be, retire a champion than go out and try to do a bunch of things that I don't know anything about.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
I hear you. So every time I've ever met you and met with you, you are always in a really good looking suit, tie. That's your thing. And when you came in today, and I knew you would, and it's funny this morning, I was like, I probably should I wear a jacket today? I'm like, I'm not wearing a jacket, but I know John and Grant will be definitely suited up. So that's a part of how you present yourself, and you're consistent with that. Right. What does that mean to you? Like,
well,
because unfortunately it's not as often, you just don't see it that much anymore,
and that's fine. It was true for other people, it's true for them, and I don't bash anybody.
Right.
I see some people, they actually go on webinars and stuff like that, and it's embarrassing. Even the things they say and how they grab themselves. Okay, you know what I mean? Like, I just crushed this dealer's head. I'm like, dude, you're on TV. So it's really kind of embarrassing.
Yeah.
I'm very clear with my guys. I have very, very few things that are absolute. One is we wear a suit every day. All right. I wear a business suit. I show up to see you. I'm here. I'm wearing my intentions. I'm here to do business. I'm not a professional visitor. And it's fun because the dealers get that. They get it. Why are you wearing that? Why are you wearing a suit in Florida? Because it's a business suit, and I'm here to do business. And I didn't invent that philosophy. I got that from a very, very cool businessman named Jim Moran. And Mr. Moran was a legend, and that's where I got it. When I was younger, a gentleman named Gary Offtring out of Peoria, Illinois. Offtring Chevrolet Oldsmobile, he owns everything just about in Peoria. I spilled coffee on my tie. I got into his office to present to him. I'll never forget this. I'm in my early 20s. He goes, "Young man, where's your tie?" I'll never forget it. And so, honestly, since then, and then reinforced by people like Mr. Moran, it's just been our thing. And when you come into our office, people come into our office. I had the governor in our office the other day, right? And he's like, this has got some magic to it. It looks good.
Really?
Yeah. He's my old friends. And he looked around. It's like, place looks great. Because and this is how we look every day. I didn't have to tell anybody to change.
Right.
Because the governor's stopping by.
How cool is that? I have a tremendous amount of respect for that. I was telling you, in the spring this year, with COVID and everything and people working from home and no dealership visits, I finally this spring re-upped my whole dress wardrobe, right? And it's freaking beautiful. I look at it every day. I'm like in my suits and sport coats and slacks and shoes and all that stuff. And I'm like, I can't wait to get back out there representing like that, because there's something to be said for suiting up, being dressed appropriate. Right. It puts your head in the right space.
Right.
And I can tell there's been times when I went to a meeting where I didn't feel like I didn't go to the top level. Mm-hmm. And it when you're there. You can feel it.
When you got game.
You're like, it when you have it, and it when you showed up a little bit short, right? Yeah. And
hate that. That's back to that. You got to give it a way to keep it.
Yeah.
If you just don't have game, but if you can find something, get somebody to start to get, and then try to grab it, because there's nothing worse than going through the whole thing, like a training program or something like that,
right.
And you didn't move the needle at all. You just go, I'm going home. I suck. Yeah, right? Oh, yeah, how was your day? Leave me alone.
Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah. Thank God it doesn't happen very often.
Right. Well, John, I have enjoyed this tremendously, man. We could do multiple episodes of this.
I think so. We both have a love affair with the automotive space.
Yeah.
I do. I love the automotive industry, and I can tell you do too.
I do. John, do you want to take just a quick second and just re-mention your company and let people know how they can find you and your company?
Sure. It's really easy. It's Hamlin and Associates. We're in Ormond Beach, Florida. HamlinAssociates.com. Our phone number is 888-600-8608. There's plenty of ways to get hold of us there.
And the governor just stopped by.
Yes.
That's cool. That's another conversation.
Yeah.
All right. John, thanks, buddy.
You bet. Thank you, man.
Peace. Awesome time. Good.
Nice.